I think when it comes to discovering our calling, there are several different principles that are very effective. Let me talk about two of them. One of them is simply the answer to this question: what is it that you enjoy doing? And what is it that you are good at? I was preaching in a Bible school several years ago, and afterwards one of the students came up to me. He was nearing graduation. He was about to move on with his life, and he had not yet figured out what it was that God wanted him to do. So he wanted me to pray for him, and he wanted my advice. And he said, how can I discover what God wants for my life? And we were standing next to a lamp, and I noticed that it had been unplugged from the wall, and the plug was just lying there. And I said to him, if you were a child and you had never seen a plug like this before, do you think that you could figure out where it goes? And he said, of course, it goes into the socket. I said, how would you know that? He said, because you can tell by looking at them that they're made for each other. And I said, this is one way that you can tell what God wants for you. God designed you in a particular way. Everything about you was custom made by the hand of the master artist, who is God himself. So if God created you in a particular way, He's not going to call you to do something completely contrary to the way He made you. He wants square pegs to go into square holes and round pegs to go into round holes. He doesn't call square pegs into round holes. That's not the way God works. God is not the author of confusion. So many times, if you just look at your own makeup, what is it that you enjoy doing? What is it that you're good at? What is it that brings you joy and satisfaction? I really believe that when you find what it is that God wants you to do with your life, it will not be some dreadful task that makes you miserable and nervous and frightened. When you find what it is that God wants you to do with your life, it's going to be something that is so wonderful it makes you want to jump out of bed every morning, and you won't be able to wait to meet the day, because you'll know that this is what you were created for. It was what you were put on the earth for. So I would say that that is one very big principle. There's another principle that I've taught on in the past, taken from the teachings of Paul, where Paul is teaching about how he says that he wishes that everyone were single, had the gift of singleness like he was. And then he says, but each one has his own special gift, this of one kind and that of another. And so you see, the Apostle Paul had the gift of singleness. This is what was God's will for Paul's life, for him to be single. And because he had that gift, it seemed to him like everybody around him should also be single. Because you see, when you have a gift and God's grace is upon you for a certain thing, that thing seems so obvious and so evident that you think everybody else around you should also be doing it. So I would ask you this question: what is it that you think everybody should do? What is it that you think is the most important thing? If you think everybody should be an evangelist, you're probably called to be an evangelist. If you think that everybody should be a humanitarian worker, then you're probably called to be a humanitarian. Do you think that everybody around you should feed the poor, or should be a pastor or something like that? Chances are that whatever it is that you think everybody else around you should be doing, that's what God's called you to do. So there's two lessons from that. Number one, take that advice, learn what it is that God's called you to do. And number two, don't make the mistake of trying to force other people around you to do what you're called to do.